I came home earlier than expected because a client meeting in downtown Dallas was suddenly canceled. On the way back, I stopped to buy a bouquet of white dahlias, the kind my husband Ryan once called pretty but ordinary. I didn't bother arguing anymore. Everyone has their own sense of beauty. At the time, I still believed our differences only came down to flower preferences. The door opened and the first thing I heard was laughter. Not the innocent laughter of children or friends gathering, the kind of laughter that only belongs between two people in love. In a bedroom. I stopped in the hardwood hallway. My heart pounded as if my body already knew what was waiting upstairs. I slipped off my heels, still holding the bouquet, and quietly walked up the stairs. The house I had spent 3 years designing, every corner, every tile, suddenly felt unfamiliar. Not a single creak. I had replaced that entire staircase last summer while Ryan was on a business trip in Houston. That same trip, he told me, Megan, my college best friend, had gone to visit her aunt. Thinking back, how many of his trips had I never questioned? I opened the bedroom door slowly, and I saw, on the ash-gray linen bed I had chosen myself because it made the space feel calm, Ryan was lying there, between two women, not strangers but heartbreakingly familiar. Megan, with her golden hair and the same eyes that held mine at my mother's funeral, and Chloe, who had stood beside me for 2 years building our company, the one I had shared every design sample and every client with. No one said a word, only Ryan looked at me, not with fear or guilt, but with annoyance. "Julia?" he blurted out like I was the one intruding. "You didn't call first." I looked at him, then at the necklace Megan was wearing. The one I gave her last Christmas. The perfume Chloe once asked to borrow now filled the entire room. I didn't ask anything. I didn't shout why or how long. I stayed silent. And somehow, that terrified the three of them more than any screaming could. I don't know what to say," Chloe spoke first, avoiding my eyes. Megan pulled the blanket up to her chest, eyes red as if the tears had been rehearsed for this moment. Ryan climbed out of bed, clumsily pulling his pants back on. "Don't misunderstand, Julia. This isn't what it looks like." I stared straight into his eyes. "You think I'm misunderstanding 3 naked people on my bed?" Silence filled the room. It felt like watching a low-budget play, only the props, the setting, and the 3 lead actors all belonged to me. "Julia, please, just let us explain," Megan's voice trembled. I cut her off, calm as ever. If I hear one more excuse, I might throw up. No one forced me out of that room. But I was the first to leave. I didn't run. I didn't collapse. I simply walked slowly down the stairs, still holding the bouquet I hadn't even placed in a vase. When I reached the kitchen, I poured a glass of water and looked out to the backyard, the one where I had planted every lavender bush by hand. Behind me were 3 people scrambling to get dressed. I didn't look back. Only one thought ran through my mind. I had given them everything. My heart, my time, my trust. And now, I would take it all back, one piece at a time. I sat quietly in the kitchen, not sure how long the water in my glass had gone cold. My eyes stayed on the garden. A breeze stirred the lavender pots along the fence, the only thing in that house that hadn't betrayed me. All the memories I'd once brushed aside came rushing back like a film being violently rewound. 4 months ago, Ryan asked me to sign a financial management authorization to help him organize investments. At the time, I had no reason to doubt him. He said it with the calm tone of a devoted husband. "It's just to track the real estate cash flow more easily. I don't want you stressed about the paperwork." I smiled and signed. Looking back now, I might have handed him the last key to control everything we owned. A week later, Chloe Manning, my best friend from high school, asked to submit a design proposal under my company's name for a potential client in Austin. She said she hadn't officially registered her business yet and needed credibility. I agreed without hesitation. We had shared late-night wine, back-to-back revisions. I never thought she'd work behind my back. Last month, Megan borrowed $60,000, saying she urgently needed to pay off her father's medical debt. I didn't ask questions. I wired the money that night, no contract, no receipt. She had once sobbed in my arms when her mother passed. I believed she'd never take advantage of me. Each request made sense, every excuse sounded reasonable, but I failed to see what hid behind the curtain. Last week, I received a call from a major client in New Orleans. I had designed their lakeside vacation home the year before. They asked bluntly, "Julia, are you still involved with the project, or are we moving forward with Jenna Design & Co. as confirmed?" Jenna? Thought they had the wrong name. But after a few follow-ups, I found out Chloe had been presenting herself as the creative director and had sent out my entire portfolio, with my projects, under the label Elite Interiors. A name we once joked about after a few glasses of wine. Now, it was real. Without me. I didn't confront anyone. I didn't create a scene. I started digging. Old emails, messages, calendars, all the little things I'd overlooked. And it all came together, sharp and clear. The investment agreement with Ryan, the one he called temporary, had a clause stating that if I didn't respond in writing within 60 days, full control would default to him. I hadn't responded. Because I hadn't read it carefully. The money transfer between Megan and me was actually forwarded to a joint account she shared with Ryan. I traced it through a strange email forwarded from my spam folder, where she had asked me to send the original file for the spa project in Santa Fe just to make edits easier. I never got the rights to that project back. And Chloe? She didn't just steal my designs, she also sent invitations to my most loyal clients from a personal email I once created for her, without access control. I still have the photo, where I was showing her how to present a mood board to meet international standards. I had created someone who turned herself into a distorted version of me. They didn't betray me in a single night. They had been planning this for months, maybe years. I just trusted them too much. Trusted blindly. They thought I would scream, text in rage, cry to get back our friendship or marriage. They were wrong. I didn't need answers from them. What I needed was evidence. And I knew the three of them weren't smart enough to cover all their tracks. I left the house in Dallas the very next morning. No note, no message, no phone call. I just placed the keychain back on the stone countertop. The one where Ryan used to sit for hours refining investment plans while I cooked. The last time I stood in that kitchen, I could still see Megan's lipstick stain on a red wine glass and a long strand of blonde hair draped over the wooden chair only Chloe ever used. I left in silence, but inside my head everything was moving with the force of a storm. I drove north on Highway 75, past McKinney, then turned off into a small lakeside town called Cedar Point, where I had once designed a vacation cabin for a former client. The cabin was vacant while they were in Europe for 3 months, and I still had the spare key in my purse. No one knew where I was, and I had no intention of letting them know. That same afternoon, I contacted 2 people. Tommy Raines, a lawyer who had worked with my father back when he was a financial advisor, and Isabel Green, a private investigator well known in Texas business circles for being cold, precise, and discreet. "I need to gather financial evidence and proof of misconduct involving 3 people," I said directly in my first call with Isabel. "My husband, Ryan, and 2 people I used to call friends, Megan and Chloe. Not to make noise, but to do things by the book." Isabel didn't ask more. Her voice was low, steady. "I'll need 5 days, but I'll start in 5 minutes." I hung up and opened my laptop. My inbox was flooded with messages from Ryan, starting with, "Please talk to me," and quickly shifting to, "If you don't respond, I'll take it as you abandoning the home." Megan sent a long, tearful voice note. "Julia, you don't understand. It's not what you think." It sounded like a script, copied from what Ryan had said days earlier. Chloe was briefer as usual. "We need to talk about the Austin project. The client is panicking. I don't know what to tell them if you stay silent." The silence said everything I needed to. The quieter I became, the more frantic they got. And I needed that. I spent the next 2 days pulling together old emails, payment records, original drafts, monthly work logs. I had backed everything up on an external hard drive originally just as a precaution, but now it was my strongest weapon. Every file, every note, every email that ended with "to Julia, my best friend," became proof of years-long deliberate exploitation. Isabel worked like a machine, On the third day, she sent me a recording of a conversation between Chloe and a building materials supplier. In it, Chloe claimed she had full authority to represent Elite Interiors. The problem was, that company had never existed legally. On the fourth day, Tommy discovered that most of the savings account Ryan and I had contributed to was moved into a shadow investment fund, registered under South Lake Real Assets, LLC. I'd never heard of it, but Ryan had filed the paperwork for it 3 months earlier, alone. At the same time, Isabel found that Megan had used the exact money I transferred to place a down payment on a luxury apartment downtown, jointly owned with Ryan. I sat in that quiet cabin, eyes locked on my laptop screen, as each new piece of evidence peeled away another layer like skin from a snake. They had never expected me to check. They thought I was too soft to confront them, that I'd shatter like a discarded wife. That was their biggest mistake. I saved everything, 3 copies, one sent to Tommy, one locked in the cloud, one on a separate drive, stored in a safe at a former client's office in Sherman, someone I trusted never to ask questions. That night, I stepped out onto the cabin's porch and looked down at the lake's glassy surface. Something unfamiliar stirred quietly in my chest. It wasn't rage. It wasn't grief. It was control. I no longer cried. Everything I needed to know I knew. Everything worth keeping I had already kept. On the lake, my reflection stretched long and clean like a single pencil line. The night wind passed over the wooden porch, cold but no longer biting. In that stillness, everything began to fall back into place. I returned to Dallas after 3 weeks without leaving a trace. No visits home, no messages. I simply rented a small apartment near downtown, where the late-day light filtered through the windows softly enough to make everything in my mind come into focus. On the first day, I sent a short email to Mr. Bruce Watson, Senior Investment Director at Bancroft Equities, the firm Ryan was pitching for a resort project in Clear Lake. I had met Bruce 3 years earlier at an art fundraiser. He once asked me about marble flooring finishes. I remembered that detail and I knew he would too. I said nothing about my personal life. I just attached a few concise documents, a copy of a notice from the Department of Building and Safety about violations at the Clear Lake project, a land status analysis showing unapproved permits, and 2 photos of fund transfers from Ryan's investment firm to a personal account. No accusations, no commentary, just facts, delivered at the right place at the right time. 2 days later, I heard that Ryan's investment pitch meeting with the board had been abruptly postponed. The firm had requested a review of certain legal details. His texts started to change tone. No more threats. Just question marks. I didn't reply. The following week, I showed up at the front of Luna Skin and Body, a high-end spa in the Bishop Arts District, where Megan had just become a co-founder. I didn't speak to her. I went straight to the building manager, Mr. Thomas Baird. I had rented office space on the upper floor years ago, and I knew how meticulous he was with lease inspections. "Hello, Mr. Baird," I said as he looked up from his desk. "I just wanted to ask if you're aware that your current ground floor tenant is conducting off-the-books cash transactions on the property? Because if so, I'm afraid it may affect your insurance renewals." He looked at me for a long moment. No questions. I'd known him long enough to understand this wouldn't require a formal meeting. The next morning, I received an email from Megan. The subject line was in all caps. "What are you doing?" I didn't open it, but I saved it. On Friday, I went to the launch event for a new furniture collection at the Studio C showroom, where Chloe was introduced as a guest creative director. I didn't disrupt the event. I didn't make a scene. I simply had a sealed envelope delivered to Mrs. Donna Wallace, Studio C's primary investor. Inside was a printed copy of a design portfolio Chloe had presented with my forged signature, along with original project images I had archived from the year before. I knew Donna. She didn't appreciate being deceived, and she especially hated having her name tied to copyright violations. That afternoon, I received a call from Studio C, not to apologize, just to clarify creative boundaries. 3 strikes, from 3 angles, no threats, no confrontation. Justice didn't require me to weigh their intentions. I just needed them to hear the echo of what they had denied all along, the truth. That night, I sat in my home office, the desk lamp casting a warm glow over a map of financial connections Isabel and Tommy had helped me reconstruct. The lines began lighting up like a spider web. Megan listed on an offshore account, Chloe transferring unauthorized design rights, Ryan still trying to salvage a frozen project fund. No one realized that during the time they thought I was hiding, I was only slowing down to see each fracture clearly. There was no need for court. The system had already turned against him. With the right evidence sent to the right places, I just had to step back and wait for the right moment. Wait for the surface they had built so carefully to crack, piece by piece. On the 10th morning after I returned to Dallas, I went to my old gynecology clinic in Lakewood, where Dr. Peterson had once overseen 2 of my miscarriages. I hadn't scheduled an appointment, just showed up early, sat quietly in the corner of the waiting room, tapping my fingertip against the chair's edge to keep my breathing steady. The ultrasound result came in under 20 minutes. The doctor didn't say much, just placed the black and white printout in my hands and nodded. 8 weeks, he said, heartbeat strong, everything looks stable. I looked down at the image, so quiet I hardly recognized myself sitting there. I had been pregnant 3 times before. Each time ended in the icy white of a hospital bed and the hum of anesthesia machines. But this time was different. Not just because my body was stronger, but because my mind no longer depended on anyone else. Ryan didn't know about this appointment, and I had no intention of telling him. After the checkup, I didn't return to the rental apartment. I drove straight to Tommy's office, carrying the printed pregnancy results and a full file of personal assets I had quietly separated over the past 3 years. I want to formalize everything under my name, I said, and ensure that anything I earn from this point forward is completely shielded from marital claims. Tommy looked at me for a long moment. He didn't ask why, just nodded and started typing. I still remembered that October evening last year, when Ryan had convinced me to transfer full ownership of my design company under management authorization. At the time, he said, "It's just to make client negotiations smoother. I don't want you entangled in legal stuff if they mess up." I had believed him. Now I knew that very signature had enabled him to quietly manipulate everything I'd built. But from the moment Dr. Peterson folded the ultrasound folder closed, I no longer saw myself as someone defending ground. I was re-architecting my life, step by step, like every floor plan I'd ever drawn over the last decade. I brought in a financial advisor named Meredith Hall, a woman in her 50s who had helped many female entrepreneurs through complex divorces. She helped me establish a private trust, completely isolated from any accounts linked to Ryan. All earnings from my design firm, now rebranded, flowed directly into that trust. I also changed all my life insurance, estate plans, and medical authorizations. The sole beneficiary was the child who hadn't even had a chance to call me mom yet. No one else. Meanwhile, Ryan's messages took on a concerned tone, long paragraphs, apologies wrapped in veiled threats. Occasionally, blunt lines like, "You know you can't be a mom alone. You need me." I didn't respond. Megan emailed, "I heard you're back. If there's something to say, just say it. You're tearing down everything I've worked for, Julia." Chloe sent an old photo, the 3 of us at my birthday party 2 years ago. Below it she wrote, "We used to be family. Do you remember?" I looked at the picture, no anger, no heartbreak, just the realization that I used to belong there and now I didn't. As night fell, I stood on my apartment balcony, one hand resting on my stomach. No one knew, but I had been speaking to the baby every day. Not with words, but with deliberate actions. Every document signed, every asset untangled, every legal barrier built, was my way of protecting this child from a legacy already rotting. Tomorrow I would head to the notary's office to sign the official document withdrawing my joint claim on the house. I had no desire to return there. No interest in fighting for it. I just needed to make sure that when everything ended, I wouldn't carry a single thing that had ever been used to control me. Someone once asked me if being a single mother was scary. I think the real fear isn't raising a child alone. It's raising a child in a home where lying has become a habit. I got a call from Tommy the attorney one afternoon in early December. His voice was calm but clear, like every word had been carefully measured. "Julia, the federal investigators just issued an official notice. Ryan's professional license has been suspended. They've temporarily frozen 3 accounts tied to South Lake Real Assets. One of them includes Megan's name. I hung up and stepped out of my office, loosely holding a cup of still warm tea. Outside the window, the sunset slid down over bare tree branches. I didn't smile. I didn't sigh. I just stood still, feeling like the cold wind outside had found its way into the deepest parts of me. 3 days later, the first article ran in the local paper. South Lake CFO under investigation for investment fraud and tax violations. Ryan's name wasn't in bold, but anyone in Dallas finance circles knew who the piece was about. His calls to the law office were routed straight to the assistant. Megan's emails bounced back with address no longer in use. I didn't need to take them to court to prove anything. The very systems they had relied on were now turning against them. Megan closed her spa within a week of an unexpected tax audit. I heard she tried to sell off all the equipment, but no one wanted to buy. Everyone feared the mess. She left Dallas quietly, with a few suitcases and a bank account that had little left in it. Chloe, once my assistant, then my impersonator in presentations, was removed from the Texas Interior Design Association after 3 clients filed complaints for plagiarism and misrepresentation. In her final response letter to the board, she still wrote, "I didn't mean to. Julia once told me to use that style." I didn't respond. They had thought I would beg, plead, or at least try to reclaim my reputation. But whether or not I got anything back didn't matter anymore. What they broke couldn't be repaired, and what I reclaimed wasn't my public image. It was my right to choose what deserved a place in my life. Ryan tried one last time through his attorney to negotiate asset division, but when the evidence surfaced, unauthorized withdrawals, forged contracts, investments made in our marriage's name without my consent, he had only one option: withdraw. The divorce agreement was finalized after nearly 2 months of negotiation. Ryan gave up ownership of the Highland Park home, removed his name from the design company, and agreed never to seek financial support from me in the future. I didn't take anything more. I just wanted to end every thread that had tied me to those people. The old house went up for sale soon after. I didn't go back to retrieve a thing, except for a small photo frame from the old bedroom, the one of me and my mother on the day I opened my first office, before Ryan ever showed up in my life. As for Megan's boutique, Chloe's studio, and Ryan's investment firm, they were either dissolved or in the process of liquidation. That afternoon, I sat alone in my apartment, opened my laptop, and began designing a nursery for the baby growing inside me. A quiet space, warm light, wallpaper with tiny woodland prints, neutral colors. Nothing gendered, nothing imposed. I wasn't doing it for the past. I was doing it because I wanted this child to begin life with intention, not compromise. When the doorbell rang, I got up and opened it. It was Martha, the woman who ran the Lakeside Inn, who once brewed me my first cup of ginger tea after the biggest turning point of my life. She handed me a small tin of cookies. "Congratulations, dear." I nodded, accepted the tin, and invited her in. We sat in the kitchen. Not much was said, just a few ginger cookies shared quietly in a soft gray kitchen. Clean, peaceful, and completely free of anything left behind. A year later, I moved into a new home north of Richardson, not big, not luxurious, but every detail inside was chosen by me, from the flooring to how morning light streamed through the white curtains. The kitchen looked out onto a small herb garden where I planted mint, thyme, and a few white peonies, the kind Ryan once said were too expensive for something that dies in days. None of the 3 people from my past existed in my world anymore. Not because I banned them, but because I had closed the door so gently, so completely, that there was no space left for them to slip through. My design firm, now called Sage & Light Interiors, had opened a small satellite office in Austin. I worked less, more selectively, but every project spoke in my voice. No trends, no approval seeking. I'd hired 2 young designers, talented, kind. They didn't know what had happened before, and I never told them. To them, I wasn't a woman betrayed. I was just the boss who was detail-oriented, soft-spoken, and always arrived 5 minutes early to every meeting. My daughter Sienna had just turned 6 months old. She had chestnut eyes, soft curls, and the habit of chewing on her sleeve when sleepy. Some nights I woke up half dreaming just to check that she was still breathing gently. And in those moments, it felt as if I had never known a single winter in my life. Sienna's room was the only space in the house bursting with color. Forest-themed wallpaper, pale yellow pillows, and soft lighting that fell over a corner shelf filled with picture books. Every time I carried her past the mirror, I saw someone new looking back at me. I no longer searched for answers. I didn't need to know who was right or wrong. Some truths don't need to be acknowledged. They live in how we choose to let go and how we rebuild, brick by brick, with the trust we once lost. One early spring morning, I received an email from an old client, a single mother living in Denver, asking if I could redesign her 2-bedroom apartment after her divorce. She said she wanted everything to feel gentle but strong. I typed back one line, "I understand that feeling more than you know." When Sienna woke up, I greeted her with a smile. Holding her felt like holding the part of myself I had once lost, but this time I wouldn't let it slip away again. That afternoon, while making tea in the kitchen, I got a message from Martha. Just a photo of a daffodil pot she had planted last year, with a short caption, "It's blooming." I looked at the screen, then stepped out into the backyard. The white peonies were blooming too, earlier than usual this year. As Sienna slept in my arms, I gently brought her closer to the window, where the soft evening light touched the freshly painted walls. No other reflections stared back. Just the two of us, a new world, and a space I had built, piece by piece, with my own hands. Julia's story isn't just about surviving betrayal. It's proof of the power of calm, intellect, and self-respect when facing heartbreak. In real life, we can't control what others do with the trust we give, but we can choose how we respond, not with vengeance, but with growth and strength. Rebirth doesn't come from shouting, it comes from quiet, steady decisions. And sometimes, silence is the most powerful strike of all. What do you think about Julia's choices? If it were you, what would you have done differently? Share your thoughts below, and don't forget to follow the channel for more powerful stories about family, betrayal, and the journey of healing.